I would say the new trends this year are big and bold and bright. Everything has a lot of color and a lot of vivid patterns.
I've seen a lot of different styles in pants, lengths, and skirt lengths as well. Is that where it's all going this year?
I think in separates and playwear and pants, as you say, pants go to every length, from ankle length with a paratrooper closing the ankle all the way up to the short mini skirt, and stopping along the way with Doris Day's famous capris, which are called capris of all lengths, pedal pushers, walking shorts.
Are people buying those?
Oh, yes. Split skirts, I think, were our #1 seller. The split skirt that we called a culotte several seasons ago is back.
How long do things like this, the trendy, the knickers and whatnot, how long do they last, though?
Well, fashion, they said years ago, every 7 years, fashions would recycle. Well, it's a lot quicker now.
What's in every year? Ms. Kavanaugh says silk, dresses, blouses, or jackets. She also says year-round dressing is becoming more popular as well. A good linen suit is something most career women can't do without. Shoes have changed a little bit this year. Looks like the heels are going down. Is that what you see?
The heels are going down on one side and going up on the other, and it's all a matter of proportion. As skirts get longer, heels get higher to keep the proportion. So for these long middies that are coming in for fall, breaking mid-calf, you have a very high heel with an ankle wrap. And then we have all these great, almost flat shoes and little tiny wedges to go with all these short skirts for summer.
Something new this year is the prairie look, similar to the peasant look a few seasons back. Ruffled blouses, full skirts, and a lot of plaid are big sellers this year, especially among the younger set. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. What's new is this, a green and white striped seersucker suit. Or how about a purple polo outfit? Fashion director Paula Jokey says, yes, men are buying these new looks.
Color is going to be real important this season. The polos are really good in the color, the shirts, the active wear, casual wear, and I think you're really going to see a trend in that for active wear and for casual, everyday, working even. The traditional is really great, and you're going to see more of an emphasis in the button-down shirts for fall, looking forward to fall. You'll see that along with a lot of the Harris tweeds and the woolly fabrications. The lapels will be a slight bit narrower this particular fall. But the traditional is really good. It's good for just about all occupations, and what they're doing also is they're taking some of the traditional jackets and wearing them as a coat, a sport coat with the blue jeans.
The traditional look, like a pair of khaki pants and navy jacket with a button-down shirt, is still popular. But these new shirt colors with bright plaid ties are showing up more and more. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. One-piece suits with French-cut legs and bold stripes. That's what you'll be seeing at the beach or by the pool this year.
The one-piece suit is the fashion suit. The difference between this season's suit and last season, a lot more strapless looks. There's a lot more asymmetrical look in a one-shoulder swimsuit. And swimsuits kind of go into three categories. You've got the bold stripes, you've got big, bold florals, and then you've got vivid, beautiful brights.
Styles for men's swimsuits haven't changed much over the years. Baggy shorts are still popular, but some of the skimpier looks are beginning to turn up as well.
It's similar in the fashions for the ladies also. I've noticed even with the teenagers, when they go swimming, they're wearing the one-piece. When they go to the beach or lay out in the sun, they're going for the skimpier or the two-piece. And I think the men are kind of going for that too. Of course, a lot depends on if they work out and they're proud of their body, and then they'll want to wear something that makes it look good.
So the answer for the fashion-conscious man or woman looking for a swimsuit this year is buy what's comfortable and looks good. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
And in the upcoming months, we intend to introduce these efforts to the public.
That's one of the main reasons
why is this really an emergency? How could we be fast? Has played a tremendous part. Is our codes and standards, the enforcement of our codes. They have upgraded their efforts in enforcing the codes, and I think ultimately we have seen a lower loss
Today's report shows property losses due to fires down in 1981 by about $2 million. Figures also show the number of reported burn injuries dropped by 5%, and the number of fire and medic responses fell by 5.5%. More than 11,000 fires were reported, and paramedics responded to more than 7,000 calls. But fire officials say arson continues to plague the city. The number of suspected arson blazes was up in 1981, although actual fire losses caused by arsonists was down. Also, the arson squad arrested 66 people, with 22 of them convicted for deliberately setting fires. And officials say they hope 1982 will be as good as 1981. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
We intend to introduce these efforts to the public, making our people aware that early warning is so essential. I think this has played a tremendous part. Another thing that has reduced our fire loss in Montgomery that I think has played a tremendous part is our codes and standards, the enforcement of our codes. They have upgraded their efforts in enforcing the codes, and I think ultimately we have seen a lower loss. Appreciate y'all coming down and giving us an opportunity to share with you and to share with the citizens of Montgomery some facts about the status of the fire report for the city of Montgomery for the year of 1981. I'd like to
Mims Hotel was built in 1840 for Daniel Pratt to house visitors from out of town. Later in the 1860s, it was used as a boarding house. The famous Alabama poet Sidney Lanier lived in the front room while teaching in Prattville. Recently, the First Baptist Church bought the property and donated the structure to the Heritage Association, provided the hotel could be moved. Heritage Association President Bob Clapper says it will be an expensive project to move and restore the building, but says the effort hopefully will gain community support.
Initially, we're going to depend largely on the service clubs of Prattville. This is a community project in response to broad community requests, and I think we can manage it, at least for the initial exterior restoration.
The historic Mims Hotel is scheduled to be brought to this property in Prattville May 26. Then officials hope restoration can begin. Matt Carmack, WSFA TV News in Prattville, Alabama.
Dr. Ronald Hamby, a Montgomery clinical psychologist, was the last witness to be called to the stand by the defense. Dr. Hamby, who helped the defense with jury selection, said he wanted to testify in the case because his profession had been attacked by the news media during the course of the trial. By reviewing the tests given to Berard in 1978 and studying a case history of Berard's life, Dr. Hamby told the court that Berard had thought disorders, that he was psychotic, and was not in touch with reality when he shot Thompson and Smith. Hamby said Berard was not so psychotic that he'd be obviously crazy just to observe him on the streets. During rebuttal, District Attorney Jimmy Evans called Dr. Thomas Smith to the stand. Dr. Smith, the psychiatrist who evaluated Berard at Bryce Hospital in 1978, told the jury that Berard was shy, a loner, and had a personality disorder. Smith said although Berard had a personality disorder, he still knew right from wrong at the time of the shooting and was competent to stand trial. Earlier in the day, Jerome's mother, Veronica, described her son as a quiet child that had very few friends. She said she couldn't explain why Jerome shot the two boys, because Jeffrey Smith and Jerome had been good friends. District Attorney Jimmy Evans expects to call at least 2 more witnesses to the stand tomorrow in the rebuttal portion of the trial. Closing arguments will be heard, and finally the case will go to the jury. Reporting from the Montgomery County Courthouse, Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Count all! 1, 2, 3! Whoa! Eagle! Hey! All right! See the other postal show. Eagle, Eagle, war them Eagles, kicking the big blue! Hey!
Teams are evenly matched. We have the biggest half of the Bruise brothers on our side. Our best team. Now, Coach Dye is just being kind.
Hey, we're already off. Now's our time. Eagle, Eagle, war them Eagles, kicking the big blue! Hey! See y'all tomorrow.
We've had a good spring. I think we're going to have a good football team. We're not as good as we should be right now offensively. I think we've got a chance to have a great defensive football team, and I think we've got a chance to have a very good offensive football team before the year's over, because we should be the kind of team that's going to get better each week. We can make playing at Auburn the advantage that we can with the spirit and enthusiasm that our student body and fans showed last year. It has a tremendous carryover on the field, and we'll certainly.
The crucial problem with the plan turned out to be the investing of the $520 million in revenues from the bond sale. The state couldn't possibly spend that money overnight, so it planned to invest the borrowed money in state banks until the road, bridge, prison, or other projects were ready for payment. The deal struck with the IRS required the state to put $50 million of that bond money into 6-year government securities. But Governor James says the state had already set aside $50 million to be matched with federal money for the widening of the state docks in Mobile.
We also anticipated that would be our long project, because all you have to go through with environmental and all of that, and that can continue. And when time comes for the state to ante up its $50 million, if the 6 years is not expired by then, we'll just give them their own treasury note and continue right on down the road.
State Finance Director Rex Rayner says the $50 million required to be invested in government notes will yield a smaller interest than if the money had been normally invested, but he says unexpected savings in the cost of the projects means the lost interest income won't be any obstacle to all of the projects that were listed.
But we feel that any loss of reinvestment proceeds would be more than made up by the increased purchasing power of the dollar today.
Alabama's unique investment plan not only caught the eye of the IRS, but a number of other states who like the profitability of the program. But Governor James thinks the precedence of this program may set a new IRS policy.
I think it was a first, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's not the last.
With the negotiations with the IRS over and Alabama essentially coming out a winner, the bonding sale will now go on. And the bonds will be sold by May 11th instead of May 4th, a delay state officials say won't cause any problems. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol. Governor James worked at the state mansion today where he said the series of day and night meetings this past week with the IRS proved there was no violation of arbitrage rules, but instead the creation of a new and unique investment program the IRS wanted to control. Governor James says the state will be allowed to go ahead with its program, but will be required to invest $50 million of the $520 million in bond revenues in 6-year government securities, something he says won't hurt the state's original plan.
I think it's a great day for Alabama. The total financial package is preserved, the construction, the jobs, the fiscal conservatism. We are delighted.
State Finance Director Rex Rayner says his concern over the possible loss of the bond issue wasn't the safety of the $460 million originally invested. He says that's safe. The tragedy in his mind would have been the lost injection of more than $520 million into the economy of the state.
For example, here we are with unemployment in certain areas of the state, 15, 16, perhaps as high as 18%. And here is the promise of 50,000 new jobs to absorb a great deal of this unemployment, plus the multiplier effect of an infusion of $500 million into the economy of this state over a very short period of time. So I felt that the impact would just be spectacular, and that was the tragedy as I saw it if for any reason we were not permitted to sell these bonds.
With the program squared away with the IRS, the bonding program will go ahead as scheduled. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The project began with a $25,000 grant from the Alabama Department of Energy for startup costs. Auburn was chosen as the plant site because most of the technology needed to build the re-refinery was already developed by Auburn researchers working on coal gasification.
It's a natural source for reducing our fuel oil costs, like for the university. It would be a good source to reduce the cost that we're having to pay for number 6 fuel oil. Getting it at very good prices. It's a good money saver.
Most of the equipment for the plant has been donated by companies which hope to make use of the re-refinery's products. The plant is expected to be operational sometime this summer, and when fully operational will produce about 2 million gallons of recycled oil a year. This is Carl Velker on the Auburn campus.
It was called People's Bank and Trust Company, and it opened on January 24, 1957. The name was later changed to the now well-known Central Bank of Montgomery. The original building that is located at the corner of Normandale Shopping Center is now a branch bank. Central's main bank is now downtown, here on Dexter Avenue. It's not every day that a bank makes news, unless, of course, it's been robbed. But the significance of this story lies in the fact that Central Bank recently made banking history by becoming Alabama's first and only statewide bank, which means Central customers can do their banking anywhere in the state. Another reason Central Bank is in the news is the fact that it's been named one of the top 100 banks in the nation, which is quite an achievement in itself, considering all of the competition from the other banks nationwide, and considering that the bank is only 25 years old. Two of the original founders of Central Bank, Ed Lauder and Hunter Flack, today still help run the bank. Walter Gavan is president. Both Lauder and Flack well remember the beginnings of their bank.
Well, I thought this bank could render service to a lot of people. I've always felt that the more service you render, the better you do. And basically, rendering service is really the function of a bank.
Well, I can hardly believe it, frankly. We had a vision, but mine didn't go that far. It's a miracle, as I see it now, coming from where we were. So even though we started with only about $500,000, our front door was just as wide as the rest of them. And if we could be friendly and see people, the fact that we were small, we had some advantages, great advantages. I think one thing we changed in this city, and that is that we brought the bank presidents and the loan officers out front where they could see people.
Beth Mims, who now works in management, was a teller when the original bank opened 25 years ago.
Opened lots of accounts. Deposits totaled over $1 million.
It was only taken
we were open, and that was very exciting. We still enjoy waiting and serving a lot of the original customers that opened on that day. Charter depositors are still banking with us.
Tomorrow night, we'll find out what effect statewide banking will have in regards to better customer service in Alabama. Also, Central Bank President Walter Gavan will talk about the future of Central Bank. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
We're having 2 flights for each team. There are multiple targets in a gridded area away from Montgomery here. There are 3 visual targets and 1 ELT, which is emergency locator transmitter target that they have to find and plot and then come back and tell the Air Force where it is.
The homes on the tour include the Joe Dearman home on Woodley Road, which is a classical Italianate design, which was recently remodeled by Jim Barganier. The William Gordy home, which was designed by architect Robert Cole, which is a low country style. The Porter McAllister home in Cottage Hills, which was built in the 1860s and remodeled. The Blondheim home on Edgefield Drive, which has a beautiful collection of artwork and Indian artifacts. And the Marvin Warren home, which is an authentic replica of a Williamsburg home.
It's called Doppler radar, and although the National Weather Service, the FAA, and the Air Force have been working jointly for years to develop an elaborate Doppler system, this somewhat simpler version is the first to be tested in routine weather service use, and the Montgomery office is the only one in the country doing the testing.
Well, essentially, it will show us velocities versus intensity. We're primarily interested in the velocity or the motional direction of the rain droplets. So if we have a circulation system inside a storm, we will be able to measure not only the direction in which the particles are moving, but also the velocity of the particles. So we will be able to actually see circulations within individual thunderstorms, which we cannot do now with our regular radar.
By the way, the new Doppler radar unit and Montgomery's regular weather service radar are both Alabama products manufactured by Enterprise Electronics of Enterprise. More about this new storm spotting tool next time. I'm Dan Atkinson with Weatherbeat.
Cells within the ground clutter, which we're not.
You know, I said that as mayor, it's certainly a pleasure to be here, but after reading all the accomplishments that Mr. Oliver's done, I'm satisfied he's the mayor. From the first day of September the 30th, 1975, that the City Council took office, this man, Luther Oliver, and I have worked together very closely. Now, there are some who don't like the fact that we work together. But we like the fact that we work together because we get things done. This is a result of working together. Now, I think everybody had rather have working together progress than a lot of talk.
Our plan is to go to redo the Collins Street. You know where it is over there? The worst street in town. We're going to widen it, curve it, and gutter it. Make it a decent street all the way from Goose Street to Cleveland Avenue, project 1. Project number 2, we intend to go out to Bellingraph and upgrade Bellingraph by redoing the structure out there, placing tennis courts and things like that in there.
Subsequently, what you're seeing now is that the black community is more or less, and unless black elected officials explain the total spectrum, a realm of the new federalism, the black community is going to rebel and be very angry because nobody really knows what the new federalism means. And as elected representatives, they are supposed to assume the responsibility and explain to their constituents what it means. And thus far, many black elected officials have not taken the task, taken the responsibility to explain to the community what the new federalism means. Subsequently, what you're seeing now is that the black community is more or less retreating now and making a decision who's in their best interest.
Usually a flight crew would go unnoticed. Usually there would not be television and newspaper cameras recording preparations for a routine flight. But today it was different, and for good reason. In the 34-year history of the Charleston Air Force Base, there has never been an all-female flight crew.
I knew it was coming. I've been in the Air Force 9 years, and I've seen a lot of change. My co-pilot's an academy graduate, one of the first women. She went through the first class out there. And
I look forward to the day when as a woman pilot or a woman crew we can come do our job without creating so much attention.
Women are a great resource in the country, and we're willing and excited about doing new and different things.
The first stop, Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. Of the approximately 90 passengers, the overwhelming majority, men.
I think it's great.
Oh, I guess it'll be all right.
A little prayer I'm going to say to you before I get on here.
It's about time. It's all right with me for the women.
Another first, and as far as anybody knows, probably a first in the history of the Air Force. It's the first time an all-female flight crew was supported by an all-female ground crew.
In fact, I rather enjoyed seeing other females out here.
With engines screaming, the C-141 taxied to the end of the runway and then peacefully lifted from Charleston without a hitch.
We have a lot of men on board, and I asked them how they feel about this event, and a couple of them called out women drivers.
Yeah, they'll be surprised, though. We'll get them there in good shape.
There are cat resorts, cat psychiatrists, cat dating services, and even rent-a-cats. 24% of American households belong to cats, and the number is increasing steadily. $1.4 billion is spent annually on cat food. One lasagna-loving, jogging-hating feline has captured the affection of millions of people. The cat is Garfield, and the man behind the cat is Jim Davis.
I think the chord he strikes with the readers is the fact that he is out for his own creature comforts. He is the center of attention. The world revolves around him. We live in a time where we're made to feel guilty about overeating, oversleeping, not exercising. Garfield not only does all of those things, he militantly defends his right to do all of those things.
Inspiration for the Garfield personality comes from the 24-odd farm cats with whom Davis grew up. as well as the flood of cat stories from fans around the world. His antics have given Davis a record 3 books on the trade paperback bestseller list at one time. His latest book, Garfield Weighs In, may make it 4.
Garfield Weighs In, actually, is just a continuation of the first 3 books. It's an ongoing story, an ongoing magazine. And I am happier with the strip, with the gags. I think they're a little more sophisticated.
Garfield, the first feline star of the comics, is a success story. The daily and Sunday comic strip, books, and products have been very successful. And there's more to come. A CBS TV special to air soon will feature the famous fat cat. Garfield's reaction to all this attention? Big, fat, hairy deal.
Well, really, it's just another race. You know, we have won at Talladega, but we just won one race. But it would be nice to be able to say, hey, we won every race that they have on the circuit. But the main thing is that, you know, we're coming back and we're not thinking about that. We hadn't won the race. We're thinking about we are going to win one.
Well, it was a hanging slider. You know, the ball just kind of set right up in my eyes, and, you know, like, I got good extension on the ball. I really didn't swing that hard at the ball, but I guess it's just a matter of getting the extension, and the ball just kept carrying, and, you know, like, before long, I didn't hear the noise.
Before closing arguments started about 4 o'clock, defense attorneys indicated they would say no motive was ever established for the killings, even though Montgomery police committed several dozen officers to the case. Defense attorneys say Berard was a close friend of one of the victims, Jeffrey Smith. They say the shootings were totally irrational, and Berard was completely insane at the time the killings took place. District Attorney Jimmy Evans said he will tell the jury Berard is no different than anyone else in the state penitentiaries. Evans says Berard is antisocial, that Berard was out to do evil at the time of the killings, and Evans says he still is evil. Evans is asking for the death penalty. The last witness of the day was called about 2:30. She was Jean Smith, the mother of Jeffrey Smith. Evans asked her if Berard was her son's best friend. She said he was not. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News from the Montgomery County Courthouse.
Del Sol is gaining ground up from the outside. Also moving up now between horses, Rockwall. They're midway through the turn, and Cupicoy's Joy leads at a half. Elbob is second ahead, Air Forbes 1/3, a length and a half. Muttering runs fourth. Gato del Sol is fifth. On the extreme outside, Reinvested. They're well bunched into the stretch. Air Forbes one has ahead in front. Gato del Sol on the outside with Reinvested. Muttering now moves up between horses. El Baba down on the inside. In the final furlong, Gato del Sol is in front. Reinvested is second. On the outside, that's Laser Light. Nearing the wire, it's Gato del Sol with the lead. Under the wire, Gato del Sol wins it by 2.5. Finishing second with a late rush. It looked like Laser Light may have got up for second in a photo over Reinvested. Muttering may have held on for fourth. And Gato del Sol, Jim, sent off at odds of 21 to 1, an upset winner of the Derby.
In practice runs before Thursday's qualifying, Parsons had been unofficially timed at over 200 miles per hour. It was cloudy and cool in Talladega, just the kind of weather that drivers want, and almost everyone expected Parsons to be the man to break the 200-mile-an-hour barrier. Parsons wasted no time once he hit the track. His first qualifying lap was timed at 200.013, and his second, 200.176 miles per hour. Benny, you've been going about 200 in practice. Did you expect it again today?
I didn't. I went out this morning just before practice and by myself and didn't quite run 200 miles an hour. Evidently, the guys did something I wasn't aware of, but I'm glad we were able to do it, you know, just purely for the guys, because that car, if you take a good look at it, you'll never see one prepared any better. They worked awfully hard to get the car ready to come down here, and for them, I'm tickled to death.
He'll be on the pole for Sunday's Winston 500.
Glenn Sharpley got Chicago a 1-0 lead when he threw the rebound of his own shot between the pads of Vancouver goaltender Richard Brodeur. Sharpley also banked a pass off the boards to rookie defenseman Dave Feemster on the point in the second period, and Feemster's goal put the Blackhawks in front 2-0. The Canucks' only goal came a minute into the third period when Stan Smeal busted in on right wing and beat Chicago's Murray Bannerman from 40 feet. It was 2-1 Blackhawks. At the 4:42 mark in the third period, Dennis Savard threw a backhander in from just in front of the Vancouver net. That score gave the Blackhawks a 3-1 lead. Savard's 10th playoff goal came with just under 4 minutes remaining. Tom Lysiak backhanded a pass. Savard beat Brodeur. Chicago won it 4-1. Vancouver simply threw in the towel.
Until recently, statewide banking was not possible because of certain state laws preventing it. But now that legislation has been passed allowing banking to be done beyond county lines, statewide bank transactions are a reality. So far, only Central Bank of Montgomery has taken advantage of the new laws. Walter Gavan is bank president.
It was the result of a 15-year struggle through the legislature to get enabling legislation to allow banking across county lines. Historically, Alabama has been what is known as a unit banking state, not allowing any branching beyond county lines. It was our vision to put together an organization which could serve the public wherever they were located in the state of Alabama, and also to have the capacity to serve the smallest master charge card holder to the largest corporate customer in the state.
Gavan says the capabilities of his institution are a great consideration, for large corporations who might choose to do business in the state.
Many corporations have as part of their corporate financial policy that they will only do business with banks which are in the top 100 in the nation. And this enables us, being in this group, being number 95, enables us to do business and to talk to some people whose very policy would prohibit us to do so if we were not in the top 100.
Gavan expects other banks to soon begin statewide service, which he says will be a necessity in order to be competitive.
We don't think that we're going to enjoy this unique position for a long time. Some of our competition have already announced plans to follow the same type of merger pattern now that the enabling legislation has been passed. And we look to see this type of thing happen. I do not think, however, for 1 minute, that this is the answer for every bank.
As far as the future is concerned, Gavan says he hopes his bank will be one of the pioneers of multi-state banking, which would provide the same banking services to central bank customers in other states. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
After he got into the Pizza Hut, he ordered some food. He sat down and stayed there approximately 30 minutes. It was about 30 minutes before the employees were able to get out of the cooler. A customer came in and saw that something was wrong and let him out.
Did they say how he got him into the cooler?
He forced him into the cooler at gunpoint, everybody that was inside.
That stuff he's putting out. He really believes that you give rich folk money, that the poor folk somehow will get their share. He believes that with a passion. He believes that if you cut out food stamps, he'll make people work. Even if there are no jobs, they'll work anyhow.
The faces of these Illinois steelworkers reflects the knowledge they've just approved a union contract that gives up more than any other in the history of their industry.
That was a shame.
The workers are giving up $4.10 an hour in wages and benefits, the equivalent of taking an $8,600 a year pay cut. Why did they do it?
Ain't no job nowhere else, so you got to keep working.
I don't like the contract. I'm against it, but I've got to protect my family and my job, try to keep going if I can.
The union's president negotiated that contract, a fact he's not happy about.
Well, frankly, it hurts to beat hell. Anytime you're giving concessions away, it hurts. And this is the case here, but it was a necessity. We had to do it. We had no choice. Because there's no way you can bargain with people that said, we'll shut the plant down. So what we're talking about here right now is strictly survival.
And the steel plant president agrees. It was a matter of survival. The Bartonville plant lost millions of dollars last year. If the union had turned down the contract,
yes, the plant we would have gone into a shutdown mode immediately.
The Bartonville steel plant hasn't made a profit in years. It lost $12 million in the last half of 1981. The company is blamed foreign competition and the high costs of energy and labor. Nearly half of the plant's white-collar workers have been laid off. The rest were told they were taking 10% pay cuts. The union concessions will save, the company says, another $8 to $10 million a year. In return, the company's pledged to keep the steelworks open if the plant starts making money.
Attempting a 49-yard field goal. Bad fumbles. Post-game comments.
The guilty verdict came shortly after 11 o'clock last night, about 4 hours after deliberations started. Immediately after that decision came back, Judge William Gordon ordered that the jurors remain sequestered until 10 o'clock this morning, when they were to start considering Berard's sentence. In this case, the jury was to decide, not just recommend, what sentence was imposed. Today, the defense brought several witnesses to suggest why Berard should get life in prison without parole instead of the death sentence. Defense attorney Ira DeMint asked the jury to consider that Berard was only 18 at the time he killed the other two boys. DeMint said Berard had no previous criminal history, and that Berard was under extreme emotional stress at the time of the killings. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Jimmy Evans, says Berard's crime was extremely heinous, atrocious, and cruel. Evans said Berard did not give his victims a chance to argue their sides, and the only way to be sure Berard doesn't kill again is to send him to the electric chair. The defense moved for a mistrial last night, alleging that jurors were deliberating the case before testimony was complete. They moved for another mistrial this afternoon when Evans asked the jury to consider what precedent their decision might set. Judge Gordon denied both motions. Moments before the jury retired to deliberate over sentencing, Evans said, "It's been a long trial, and about Berard, I hope he's ready to meet his maker." Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse. It took the jury about 4 hours to convict Berard of the murders, and just as long to decide what sentence he should get for his actions. The jury heard arguments this morning both for and against the death penalty. Defense attorney Ira DeMint told the jury Berard was only 18 when he committed the murders. He said Berard was under extreme emotional stress at the time of the killings. DeMint asked the jury to give Berard life in prison without parole instead of death. But the prosecution, led by District Attorney Jimmy Evans, said the only way to make sure Berard would not kill again was to sentence him to death. The decision came just before 5:30, death in the electric chair. Afterward, Evans said he will argue at Berard's sentencing that death is the appropriate sentence.
The trial is not a victory. It won't bring Bunky Thompson and Jeffrey Smith back. It's just justice. And that's all the state contended for, was justice.
DeMint had no comment. Judge William Gordon set May 14th as the formal sentencing date for Berard. At that time, Gordon can go with the jury's recommendation or give Berard life without parole. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse.
A crowd of better than 100,000 was basking in the Talladega Sun today as 40 of NASCAR's best took the green flag over the Winston 500. The general consensus was this would be a fast race. After all, Benny Parsons was sitting on the pole as the first man to qualify at better than 200 miles per hour at Talladega. But almost from the outset, it was obvious this would not be a record-setting race. 9 yellow caution flags appeared throughout the day, keeping any one driver from grabbing a commanding lead. And over the 188 laps, there were 51 lead changes. Several of the top drivers had to leave early, including Cale Yarborough and Richard Petty. Petty had fuel pump problems that forced him from the race about 2/3 of the way through, continuing his string of bad luck at Talladega.
Rich, what's the problem? What happened?
Well, I don't know. Lost fuel pressure. I don't know whether it wouldn't pick it up out of the gas tank. I guess I don't know where the pickup broke in the gas tank or what.
Richard, Winston 500 will lose you one more time.
Yeah, they have another next year.
After a late caution flag, several drivers entered the final lap, all bunched with a chance to win it. And on the back straightaway, Darrell Waltrip with his Mountain Dew Buick ripped Then around the final turn and into the straightaway, Walter held off Terry Labonte, Parsons, and Kyle Petty to win it by a car length. It was Darrell's 4th trip to the winner's circle in 8 starts this season.
If you do this over and over and over again, the same guy's not going to win every time. You know, when the start-finish line is down where it is, it really confuses you. We're used to racing on racetracks and start-finish line in the middle of the turn, trial. And so with it down there, it changes the strategy. You know, Benny did the right thing. If I'd have been Benny in his position, I'd have done the same thing. Hopefully, I'd have been able to hold the guys off in that, and then I would have won the race if I'd have done that. You never know.
Darrell Waltrip wins the 1982 Winston 500 with an average speed of 156.68 miles per hour. Reporting from Talladega, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
It's a buyer's market now for gasoline, and consumers are actually smiling when they go to the pumps. In Montgomery, as in other parts of the state, regular gas can be found for $1.05 a gallon and unleaded for $1.14. Why the cheap prices? Petroleum Council Associate Director Johnny Johnson says an oil glut is the reason. He says OPEC nations produced more than they could sell and have since cut back. And that reduction by OPEC, according to experts, means that prices won't go down anymore, and they'll most likely begin increasing sometime this summer. Johnson says once OPEC decides to raise prices on a barrel of oil, it only takes about a week before we feel the pinch at the local pump. He says the cheap prices are only temporary, and the best method to fight those high prices is conservation. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Of course, we've already contacted the utility companies. They're aware of this issue.
According to the architects, when the jail complex is completed, it will extend all the way out to Scott Street. That will mean that Alabama Street will be closed. That will be important.
It's hard to believe, but starting with one female dog who's allowed to have puppies twice a year, in 7 generations she'll have more than 4,000 offspring. That's in less than 4 years. At the Montgomery Animal Shelter, Director Jerry Anderson says that his group is trying to finance an in-house spaying and neutering clinic to help control the local animal population without having to destroy the cats and dogs. Another major problem is animals picked up without any identification.
Like that identification would practically solve our problem here on not necessarily stray animals, because we'll probably always have them, but getting these animals back to their rightful owner.
The shelter is also working with a local civic group that's tattooing identification numbers on pets' inside thighs, a permanent way of keeping up with your family's pets. So if you're thinking about adopting a pet, Be Kind to Animals Week is the perfect time to visit the shelter on the Mobile Highway just north of the bypass. And after all, who can resist a face like this? I'm Bob Howell, WSFA TV News.
Data service unit of the terminal product located at the customer premise at the data unit approved on
Charles Humphrey, with the architect firm that's working on the county's new courthouse and jail complex, asked the commission to let the firm start preparations for construction documents. The commissioners approved Humphrey's request to start working on plans to reopen Scott Street and close Alabama Street. Under the plan, the jail complex would extend out to Scott Street, blocking off a portion of Alabama Street. One block of Scott Street has been closed to traffic since Baldwin Junior High School was constructed. The commission also approved a request by Montgomery County School System Superintendent Henry Adair to give schools half of the revenues brought in by the new state uniform beer tax. Adair told the commission his office projects that the county school system will be $2.1 million short of accreditation requirements due to federal cutbacks and fewer tax dollars collected under the current use property bill. Commissioners Bill Joseph and John Knight made it clear their votes for Adair's requests were not a result of a resolution passed by the local legislative delegation. Joseph said he wouldn't call names, but he said at least one member of the legislative delegation helped create the school's financial crisis by supporting the current use bill in the legislature. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
The crucial issue of the legislature's last day of the 1982 regular session was the budgets and the teacher and employee pay raises. But during the time negotiations were going on for the size of the budgets and the pay raises, the legislators passed a number of bills at a pace faster than almost any time during this regular session. The Senate passed 91 bills and resolutions, the House 126, all on the last day. All of those bills and resolutions are now in the governor's office, waiting for his approval or his veto. Since the governor spent most of last week in Washington negotiating with the Internal Revenue Service over the state's oil lease investment plan, and since the governor intends to travel to Washington again Wednesday to meet with the state's congressional delegation, he only has tomorrow to act on that pile of legislation before they're automatically vetoed at the end of this week. Officials in the governor's office say he intends to meet with his legislative and legal aides early tomorrow morning to begin that reviewing process. There are a number of major pieces of legislation still pending with the governor, including a bill that would remove driver's education as a required course for high school graduation, a bill that would take gun control authority away from cities and put that authority solely in the hands of the legislature, a bill that would change the state's income tax deductions to conform with federal deductions, and a bill creating a one-stop environmental agency to handle permitting for commercial and industrial prospects. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Strengthened our cash position. We will continue with the construction of the pipe mill, and this is not considered, nor should it be considered, a permanent plant closing, but until business picks up and until the wave and the flood of imports that we're getting through the Gulf ports gets dealt with through our dumping laws and countervailing duty laws, we're going to try to make a determination as to whether we can continue to operate at that low of a level.
have to maintain 3 deputies around the clock here to answer complaints. We wish this wasn't the case, but it's a necessity. I think it's more through ignorance than neglect. Dogs, especially on short chains, when these hot months are coming up, they're tied out in the backyards in a lot of cases on a short chain. They can't reach their food or water if they have it. And we have quite a few cases in the summer months where animals are locked up in cars with the windows up. And we had some literature out of here a while back and usually publicize this on the beginning of the summer that it can go in excess of 150 degrees in a car with the windows up when the ambient temperature is around 90 degrees.